Okay, I am Tong Daspan, or Tong for short. I'm from Nigeria.
Where in Nigeria?
I'm from Jos in north central Nigeria. Jos is one of the 36 regions of Nigeria. We call them states. So Nigeria has 36 states, just like the US has 51. Well, typically in my home, I'll begin a day by getting up very early in the morning, getting children set for school, getting myself set for work. Then I'll go to school to teach. Afterward, I'll prepare meals for the family, which is typically a duty women do. Few men do that in the typical Nigerian culture. Then I would have some time with my children to help them with homework, and then to check on my garden and my animals. Yeah, I keep a garden of many vegetables, but it's just beyond backyard garden. Lots of Nigerians do large scale farming, like good portions of land. And usually I have some 3-4 portions around my house, or even a little farther from my house. Some of them are crops, but basically on a typical day, I'll have time to check on the one just around my house, which are the vegetables we'll need for daily cooking or stuff like that. And then the animals are also just farm animals, goats, turkey, chicken, that mostly just roam around, are not strictly kept in the sense of it, but they just move around and then return to take shelter in the night. Yeah, there are quite a number of traditions. One of them is greeting elders. Typically, the value of respect is expected of every Nigerian. People who are older than you are supposed to be highly respected. And you do that in several ways. For instance, you don't call people by their names, especially people who are older than you. You have to put at least a title. It's not unusual to hear someone call you Auntie Prime or something. You don't have to be biologically related to them. Children could call their teachers in school auntie or uncle, simply because it's like you just have to cushion the effect of the name. It's too big to just call it. Not to even talk of a child calling their parents by their names. That's too much. So usually you would put a title, and if those people actually have a title already to their names, Mr., Mrs., or a doctor, you always try to include that. And then you bend down to greet people, just show some bow, or just show some form of respect, especially people who are older than you. And then you don't take things with your left hand. When somebody gives you things, you don't use your left hand to take it. It doesn't look respectful. You should also not just give your right hand. If possible, use 2 hands to take that thing and say thank you several times. So you should say hello to people, well done to people. And it doesn't matter how many times you've met them that day. So if you're meeting the person 10 times that day, you're still expected to greet them 10 times. Yeah. And then there are several other cultures, like we have cultures that relate to maybe marriage, wedding proceedings. Someone said a Nigerian weds 3 times, but no, not in every region anyway. But typically there would be a traditional wedding, maybe a white wedding and a court wedding. So, and then the wedding day is a big thing. The bride is the main thing, and she has to really look good and fresh. Like in past times, some cultures even take a lady to a fattening room so that she becomes really fat months to the wedding. She's fed well and all of that. But with enlightenment, people know that being fat it's not a very healthy thing. So those have changed a bit, but then people are expected to really look very good on their wedding day. And a woman who gives birth to a baby is really taken care of and celebrated. For like 3 months, if possible, she wouldn't do anything. She will just be pampered, the baby bath, taken care of with lots of delicious meals that have peppers in them, like pepper soups, lots of good things. Maybe a way of appreciating the woman and just celebrating the baby. It is called Omugo, typically in the Igbo culture, but it's a word virtually every Nigerian connects with, even though the different languages and cultures have their own unique names. So yeah, Nigeria has a diverse culture, about 250 ethnic groups and over 500 languages. But basically, there are three big regional languages, which is the Hausa in northern Nigeria, the Igbo in eastern Nigeria, and the Yoruba in western Nigeria. So Omugo is a term from eastern Nigeria that is used to describe the period shortly after birth that a woman is really pampered. But the other cultures have their other names. I'm from a minority tribe, not one of the three big ones. But English is the official language, even though Nigeria is surrounded by French-speaking countries. Nigeria uses English as the official language.
Wow.
There are top schools that teach other languages, but I mean the average Nigerian or the public schools sometimes don't really have that involved. But typically, you will more likely find French in the countries because Nigeria is surrounded by French-speaking countries. But I didn't even have an opportunity to learn French even in school. So, but I learned my own dialect, my own language. It's called Mogavo. And then I have learned Hausa because I'm in northern Nigeria. It's the regional language. So I have to communicate in the marketplaces or other places. So it's the central transactional language because the other languages are too small that we don't have a unifying base. So I learned Hausa automatically as you grow, you just speak it in the community. Then I learned my parents' language. They happen to both be Mogavul, so I learned to speak Mogavul, even though I grew in a region that speaks Fiam, which is not close to my language. I didn't get to learn Fiam much because I was in a mission area that had a diverse group of people and the language was not very active. But somehow I married a Fiam man eventually. So after the marriage, I'm beginning to learn to speak a little bit of Fiam. Well, I think typically the difference is in how things are available and structured for learners in the United States. My schooling was maybe a little more rigorous and harder because you just have to make things work amidst very scarce resources. There are very good schools in Nigeria, but they are also very expensive for just a very few people who can afford it. But I mean, typically in a Nigerian elementary school or public school, for instance, you wouldn't have something like what we're doing now in this class, like watching a video in class, typically not. So all of those kind of resources, they're not very available for people to learn. And then the classes are far more crowded. You don't see 20 people in a class easily. You can have a class of 45, 50, or even more. During my undergraduate, I was in a class of 2,000 for my remedial, and I virtually never entered the class till I finished that whole year. I had to take classes just outside, and that was in a federal public university. So you just have to find a way around it. I did my high school and even my university without a single textbook, without internet, so I just depend on whatever I get from the teacher. But towards my graduation, I had access to a cafe I could go to and access a public service internet. So to a large extent, I think students in the US have virtually everything it takes to learn. They have no excuse to fail. I want people to know that my country is diverse. It's interesting that even some Nigerians don't know the diversity in Nigeria. They don't even know that there are so many languages apart from the three main regional languages. And I also want people to know that Nigeria is a very rich country, very rich in natural resources, very rich in human and relationships. It's typically not nice not to receive guests in Nigeria. You don't book appointment to visit people. You just walk into anybody's house and you should be offered something anytime you appear. So this huge community interdependence on one another. Yes, there are lots of other things that have gone wrong in Nigeria, particularly around security. There are poverty issues, just like I reflected that in the schooling situation most of the times, and then the power sometimes is not even steady. You use candles in the night to read at students and all of that. But then typically it's just a beautiful place to be. You would enjoy lots of good human relationship. Insecurity problems are still quite hard, especially in the northern part, the Boko Haram group and all of that. But it's typically a good country to be. One of the countries you should look forward to visiting. Well, there are three tiers of government. You have the federal, the state, and the local governments. And typically, that's how it works. The biggest is the federal. It controls everything in the nation. And then the states administer things that are typical in their regions, just like states too here are in charge of things like maybe education. They control driving issues and stuff like that. Well, for us, typically the federal controls everything, and then the states are just a step down in the execution. So there are typically uniform standards across board that are expected. So you have the local governments, which are like the counties here, then the state, and then which is the regions, and then the federal, which is the bigger tier. Yes, there are, but again, because of the huge diversity, these things are more regionally associated. Like you have events like the Yam Festival, but I've never even seen one. It's not something around my region. You have the Agugu Festival. You have horse riding in the far north. There are typically the Lagos Carnival. They are more regional, yes, and cultural events that take place. Except for national things that we all observe, like the Independence Day every 1st of October 1960, every 1st of October yearly, and things like the Democracy Day, 12th June yearly, and stuff like that. So, and other religious holidays, because it's hugely Christian or Muslim population. The other religions are a very negligible percentage. So those are typically the things, but other things are more regional, and there are countless of them depending on the cultures. There are things that are typical in my culture, like a day of coming together. We call it Puskad, and stuff like that, where people just meet, dance, and just celebrate and have time together. But I've never even attended one, so for my family, it's typically the religious celebration. Around Christmas, Easter times. Well, sometimes when it's in the village, like if you have to travel to be with the extended family, and in Nigeria, it's typically a community life. You're not strictly nuclear in the sense of it, even if you're away from your hometown. So, but I mean, when you have to reconnect with the bigger family, it's just lots of catching up and storytelling, staying late into the nights, and then lots of dancing into the night too. But with insecurity problems these days, those kind of late night events are really piping. Well, a lot of advance in technology has reached Nigeria, even to the villages of Nigeria. Quite a number of people have access to phones and to smartphones in particular. Maybe not so much of laptops and bigger gadgets, but lots of Nigerians have cell phones, and there's a lot of WhatsApp in particular, lots of sharing of information, pictures, videos via WhatsApp. Facebook is also much in vogue, much in use. Those two, yes, for social media. A few others who go a step higher will be in LinkedIn, professionally, yeah, but Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, yes. Well, I think one of them, and it still stands out, is the fact that people just don't understand the diversity even within that country, including Nigerians themselves. Yeah, basically people who belong to the big regional languages that I talked, the three, imagine that those are about the languages there. So if you say you're from Northern Nigeria, someone like me, typically they conclude that you're Hausa. You don't even know that just in my state alone, there are almost 100 languages. So even Nigerians, I've met Nigerians even in the US who are just getting to know that when they get to meet me. So yeah, I want people to know that that's not true. There's a lot of diversity. There are lots of language groups and work going there because they have specifically gone to Nigeria because of that multicultural setting. And then for the misconception, yes, it's true, but it's not all true as people think. I know Nigeria has had an image for great corruption and all of those things that people probably hear over the news. Yes, it's true. I know every system has its brokenness. And for Nigeria, yes, there's lots of that. But then there are lots of good people in Nigeria, lots of good things that go on. So I don't want people to just conclude that the moment they hear of Nigeria and they hear of Nigerians, the only impression that comes to mind is that, you know, this is a corrupt person, this is just a corrupt country. We have lots and lots of local games. We just play them as they are. So we have things like Dara in the north. Sometimes it's a wood that has holes in it, and then we have olive seeds and we move them around. We get to a certain number. When you have 4 in a particular hole, you take it up and then you try to make a 4 anywhere else, even in the quarter of your opponent, so that you get so many of those seeds to yourself. We have lots of other games we do in the night, things like hide and seek, but we call it boji bojiwo. So boji bojiwo, wanda nakama, you know, children sing it and run around and do hide and seeks under Good Moon Day. But then again, with security problems, people are learning to be more to themselves. There are other things like in northern Nigeria too, like Gata, you know, most of those are typical of the Hausa nature. We have some of our very indigenous ones too, but lots of even children in Nigeria these days may not know about those things. They are like plays, you know, we sing them in our dialect like Mara Mara Garmaton, many things like that. So I'm not very sure of what games may be available out there that may have already been structured for me to recommend. But then we play the Ludo too. That's quite common. I know people here know about that one. So those are some of the games we play: Snake and Ladder, card games, chase. Not very common. Not everybody plays that. I mean, it's a less common one, but lots of people know how to play some of those games too. Books, as I said, I probably finished my elementary school and even high school without having the privilege of even a library of books. Yes, but there were a few books that I got to read, but again, they are not typically Nigerian books. Beauty and the Beast, you know, Sleeping Beauty, all of those things. I got to know some of them as I began to teach as an elementary teacher too, but I didn't have those privileges growing up. And they are not typically indigenous books that I know, but there are other books that are quite good, but I'm not sure for elementary levels, like Chike and the River, you know. Well, I never really thought and knew I would be a teacher, actually. But again, this is another truth and reality of the educational system in Nigeria. Nigeria has over 200 million people. And so it's quite a competitive society. In a way, it's hard to leave, to push yourself and to make it. So a lot of Nigerians are hardworking because you have to really push forward and stand out, you know, to not survive only, but thrive. So the admission criteria is quite hard. Most times you apply for something you want to study, and many times, many times, it may not be very possible to get to study that. So I wanted to be a medical doctor because I suffered so much from health complications when I was growing up. So much so that nobody knew I would live to be 10. So I was so curious that I would really want to get to know what was wrong with me. So I wanted to be a medical doctor. And I had everything it takes. I met all the criteria for my high school and my final exams and everything, even the remedial course I did as a pre-degree course in the university. I had all A's and 1B, but I still couldn't get to study medicine. So I actually did my undergraduate degree in microbiology. But while I was doing that, I got to meet a group of girls in the dorm where I lived who had hearing impairment. And they were particularly interested in me because I play the guitar and mostly I will be moving with my guitar to honor one invitation or the other within the university and even outside of my state. So one of those days they met me and they were dancing around wanting me to play a song to them. I didn't know they were deaf. I'm sorry to use that word. They had hearing impairment, but somehow someone got to introduce me to them and we became friends. So I learned sign language. So after my undergrad degree, again, that's not something you find in schools. In US schools, it's just available. You can learn sign language. It can be offered in school. Music can be offered in school so easily, and French. But that's just for a very few top schools in Nigeria. But I got the opportunity to learn sign language. And then after my undergraduate degree, every Nigerian who is under 30 is required to spend 1 year of free of service to the nation. And you will be posted to another region of Nigeria, which is different from yours, so that you can have some kind of cultural awareness too. And you will have some paramilitary training, you will wear certain uniforms and have some exposure and even work either in schools or in industries or in companies. It is only after that that you're qualified to have a job. So you need that certification to be in the real job market, except if you need to be exempted because you're over 30. Now, during that NYC, that's National Youth Service Corps experience, I was posted to a school. So that was my journey into teaching. And immediately after that 1 year, before I could return to start seeking for jobs, some of my deaf friends had already secured a job for me in a demonstration school for the deaf. So immediately I came out of my youth service, I started to teach science to people with hearing impairment in another region from where I served and a different region from where I am from. And I was barely 5 months there, and then I was called to the capital city in Abuja again to teach in a school that just began. So we had lots of people, over 50 people turn in for the interview, but I was among the 12 that were picked. I had no education certificate, and some of the people that were turned down had education certificate. So it occurred to me that probably I had a calling to teach, because all the other jobs I sought for in the laboratories for microbiology and all of that didn't seem to call me, but all the schools that I sought for me, even when I was not even thinking about it. So I went for a postgraduate diploma in education. And from there, went for a master's in science education. And now I am on a PhD program for science education. Meanwhile, I've been teaching for the past 12 years straight, including heading a teacher institution for the last 6 years at the Theological College of Northern Nigeria. So I think my calling to teaching is just something else. I look back with amazement. I feel, wow, life is just interesting, but I'm truly fulfilled. I have been so glad being in class, meeting people. Sometimes I imagine living all my life in a laboratory with my microscope. I would have lost so many relationships and people. But it would have still been a good life, who knows? But I'm very happy to be a teacher. Well, I just want the audience to know that they have every reason to succeed in school, in everywhere, and that they're working in a system that has empowered them with every resource they need. And even this video is a big plus. Exposing elementary students to cultures, to other people, it's a big plus. I really appreciate this initiative of creating awareness and also of appreciating other peoples and other cultures. This is beautiful. I would want to mimic something like this back in my country.